What's in the Settings tab? Hello, this video will show you what's in the Settings tab. In this tab, you can configure signal testings for both outputs of your generator, create and save your own custom waveforms, schedule the generator's runtimes, and make other settings affecting the delivery and application of your program. Let's check the signal settings here. You can change settings of both out1 and out2. Duty cycle here. Only one waveform can have a duty cycle, the plain square wave. For square wave, it's best left at 50 until you know more about the subject, and it's for techies. Amplitude is also known as voltage. Values of 14 to 20 are needed for contact mode, while remote mode will work with almost any value, but most people use 4 to 10. Offset. This is for techies too. There are three kinds of values: 0%, positive 100%, and negative 100%. 0% is Spooky 2's normal mode. Positive 100%. Dr. Hoda Clark specified 100% offset for all her programs. Values of negative 100% are used for Spooky 2 code laser. Spooky 2 Central requires positive 100%. Phase angle. This requires both outs. For now, it's useful when driving an external device that can mix both signals. The difference between two out-of-phase waves can create harmonics that hit motor oscillatory rates. It can also be used to stimulate inverse and sync when running a generator in standalone mode, a complex subject, best left to techies. Head lock. If checked, it prevents amplitude, offset, and waveform from being changed by the program. Modulate out1 is for generator X only. If checked, out1 is amplitude modulated by out2. Gating abruptly turns the signal off and on repeatedly. Each time this happens, it generates many additional related harmonics, making the signal more powerful. A value of 4 will apply gating 4 times a second. Tick the out boxes. You can choose gate on out1 or out2. With the second option, you can specify the on and off time to get a specific draw for your gate signal. To get a 4 Hz gate with a 20% duty cycle, first need to calculate the period. For a 4 Hz waveform, the period is 250 milliseconds. 20% of 250 milliseconds is 50 milliseconds for the milliseconds on value, and the remainder is 200 milliseconds for the millisecond off value. This is a wobble pane. Wobble set here will run throughout the treatment. Amplitude and frequency wobble both offer controlled variation in the values of signal amplitude and frequency. Amplitude wobble is useful for keeping pathogens off balance by changing the power constantly, and it also provides a hammering effect. Frequency wobble varies the frequency constantly to cover pathogens' mutations and prevent them from being adapted to steady frequencies. The waveform here, they dictate the shape or trajectory of how the variation will be applied over time. The X% here, this prescribes the intensity with which the wobble is applied. 1% is good for frequency, while larger values are more useful for amplitude. Wobbles are not applied in a smooth, continuous way. The value in the steps changes jump from one single discrete value to the next, and steps tell Spooky 2 how many jumps should be inserted along the trajectory. Harmonic wobble. These apply to frequencies only, since voltage can have no harmonics. For more details, please check the user's guide. Schedule pane. You can set generator runtime here. Run from X to X. You can use the first menu to set the start time for this generator, and the second menu to schedule a halt. To disable scheduling, you can set both menus to the same time, like this. Stop when complete. If checked, the current program will be allowed to finish the sequence before quitting. Run for X hours. Here, You can set this generator to run for the number of hours you desire. This setting will override any repeat sequence settings already entered. Start in X days, X hours, X minutes. You can delay a generator's start here. There would be a countdown if you start the program. Contact mode options. These controls allow you to make contact mode a more comfortable experience. Ramp up X volts per second. Gently ramps up the amplitude at the start for comfort. The ramp-up rate is the rate of increase of the voltage in volts per second. Ramp down X volts per second. Gently ramps down the amplitude at the end of the program for comfort. The ramp-down rate is the rate of decrease of the voltage in volts per second. Reduce amplitude less than X thousand Hz. Because low frequencies can sting and tingle uncomfortably, this control allows you to lower the voltage for all frequencies lower than the 1000 Hz value you specify. 10,000 Hz is the default. However, the threshold at which this comfort sets is different for everyone. You can experiment to find your own threshold by lowering the value about 1000 Hz at a time until you find it's biting. Startup options. You can use it to choose whether to start programs automatically on launch. You can choose manual start, auto resume. Frequency limits. This pane helps to use harmonics and subharmonics. You can do that by defining your desired bandwidth upper and lower frequency limits in this pane. Here, you enter the upper delimiter in Hz. Spooky 2 will not create a frequency higher than this. Here, you enter the lower delimiter in Hz. Spooky 2 will not create a frequency lower than this. This is the Use Harmonic menu. You can choose the harmonic system you wish to use for the transposition. Spooky 2 will create the lowest harmonic inside the bandwidth. Output shadowing pane. This multi-purpose pane allows you to slave Alt2 to Alt1, create a dynamic carrier, specify different voltages on each Alt, swap waveform, the frequencies, and the amplitudes between outputs, and to slave this generator to another one. Output equals. In the top line, the first field specifies the number of the generator you wish to slave to this one. The second field is the factor, the value by which you want to multiply this generator's frequencies for transmission by the slave. The third field is the constant. This can be used to offset the slave frequencies by a constant amount, or with a factor of 0, send a single fixed frequency to the slave. Swap waveform every X seconds. Used for contact mode to prevent acid burns on sensitive skin, and for making colloidal silver. A value of 60 seconds is used for contact treatment, and 300 seconds for silver. The rest of these controls apply to the outs of this unit. Alt2 equals. If this line is grayed out and unavailable, this is because inverse unsync is selected. To allow its use, for Alt2's waveform, select follow Alt1 or another waveform instead. The first field here is the factor. Enter the value by which you want to multiply Alt1's frequencies. Use this for programming dynamic carriers, very high frequencies, and by entering a value of 0 to transmit a contact audio band frequency on Alt2 in addition to Alt1's frequencies. The second field is the constant. With 1 as the factor, enter the number of Hz you wish to add to Alt1's frequencies, as in the Schoon effect. Enter 0 in the factor field, and you can program any frequency as the constant. The third field subtracts Alt1 frequency from the computed Alt2 frequency. This is used in the creation of bit frequencies. Alt1 fixed stat. This is a single carrier frequency, typically used for plasma. Alt2 will be computed such that the resulting modulated frequency will create a sideband that hits the program frequency. Swap frequencies and amplitudes for out 1 and out 2. Tick to run plasma programs that need a fixed carrier and low input frequencies. Waveform Setup. This is where you come to configure your waveform for out 1 and out 2. The pane is divided into 6 vertical columns: 1, 2, waveform, wave cycle multiplier, spike, and spectrum. Waveform and spike are further divided into 2 columns each. You can choose the waveform for out 1 by clicking this column. For example, I choose square wave for out 1. I can choose waveform for out 2 by using this column. For example, I choose this one, or you can choose follow out 1, spike and sync, or inverse and sync. They create the wave from out 2 based on the selection for out 2. After choosing the waveform, you will see the results in the waveform display here. This is a waveform for out 1, and the waveform for out 2, and the waveform for Spooky 2 boost output. Graph display here. You can choose to show the graph of MN or BN output. Let's check the waveform here. These are sine wave, square wave, sawtooth, inverted sawtooth, triangle, sine damped, square damped, sine H-bomb, and square H-bomb. Here are custom waveforms you can choose. If you click this, the waveform will be inverted. Waveline. Allow all waveform values. This is the default. This means allow both positive, negative, and zero values in the waveform. Positive sign. Allow only positive and zero values in the waveform. This can be used in lieu of a 100% offset waveform. Negative sign. Allow only negative and zero values in the waveform. This can be used in lieu of a negative 100% offset waveform. WCM column. The WCM stands for a very special kind of multiplier, Spooky 2's unique wave cycle multiplier. This is what enables Spooky 2 to transcend the Spooky 2 XM's hard limit of 5 MHz, so it can transmit up to 25 MHz. It's also used to create the complex damped and H-bomb waves. You can see that damped waves have a value of 8 in this column, and the H-bomb waves have a value of 16. What this means is that Spooky 2 creates 8 copies of a sine wave, then enfolds them into a single wave cycle using a complex algorithm to create the damped waves, and does the same for the H-bomb waves 16 times. If you count these waves' peaks and troughs, you will see that this is so. Entering a WCM value higher than 1 for any of the plane waves does the same thing. This allows you to use any wave you wish with a very high frequency. A good value is 5. When you are creating spikes, their number is controlled by the value you enter for WCM. The spike here. Select spike and sync or inverse and sync to use this, and ensure that an appropriate value is entered in the WCM column. Length. This determines how long the spike will be applied for. A value of 2 is good for frequencies higher than about 10,000 Hz, and 1 for frequencies that are lower. Higher values may be useful in remote mode, but could be tingly in contact mode. Ratio. This determines the voltage of the spikes in relation to the overall voltage of the underlying waveform. If your amplitude is 20 volts, and you enter 4 in this field, the spike's voltage will be 20 volts, and the remainder of the wave will be 5 volts. Positive spike and negative spike allow you to specify whether you want positive spikes only, negative spikes only, or both. Edge. Positive and negative spikes are normally produced on the leading edge of a waveform. This control allows you to produce negative spikes on the trailing edge as well. Research has shown that this has a pronounced biological effect, and it may even be more powerful than the leading-edge spike. Count. Specify the number of spikes you want here. A value of 0 will create the maximum number possible. Spectrum percent. This allows multiple frequencies to be produced at the same time. F2 control pane. It allows you to build a second frequency into your waveform. Its advantage is that you can use it to automatically add a high-frequency dynamic carrier to each frequency in your program. After all these settings, you can click Write Waveforms.csv. It allows you to save any waveform you design to CSV file and view as a graph for fine-tuning. Restore defaults here. If I click it, all the settings will be restored to the defaults. Audio options. If you tick, it will notify when 0 Hz. For more details about the Settings tab, you can check the user's guide. Okay, thanks for watching this video.